And with that, without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to Jim Smith, who is our lead instructor here. And he will introduce this year's addition to our family and friends. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Ken. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome all those in attendance tonight, families, friends, and members of Local 55 for joining us. Hope everyone had the opportunity to get a bite to eat as well as view projects from this year's class of 2013. I'd also like to thank our local contractors for their support and contributions to the fifth year class of 2013. Our first graduate tonight will be Dan Aldridge. He's from our service department, and so I'll have our service instructor speak on his behalf, Gary Lehrman.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening. I'm Gary Lehrman, the training service instructor. 25-year member and have been an owner member for the past 22 years. This graduating apprentice is also a milestone in my own career. He was one of the first in my class to officially graduate from the service program. I remember Dan was one of the students in our first service class. We started with an icebreaker. Everyone got to tell a joke, and this was Dan's joke. He said, "A good friend will bail you out of jail, but a best friend will be sitting next to you saying, 'Damn, that was a good time.'" Dan's graduation caps a 5-year journey of on-the-job and classroom training. Dan has and is currently working for Apollo Sheet Metal, starting in the residential program and working up to a lead technician in the controls division. Dan previously worked as an ice technician at the Franklin County track rank, and no, he didn't wear an orange suit that said DOC on the back. Dan came to us with good mechanical knowledge, no doubt, from his 598 fitter dad and granddad, and himself invested time in high school shop classes and junior college.
I don't think they're going to rotate like they're supposed to.
Kenny Cox, my employer here at the JC, talked with Dan recently about some of the projects he's worked on at Apollo, and many include jails, schools, and a couple of Hanford projects. Ken asked Dan what were some of the major differences in these projects, and Dan said, one, the equipment stays on all night, and the other, it shuts off. Dan's aspirations at Apollo are to advance to a foreman position and not have to travel during his career. So without further ado, I present to you Dan Aldridge.
Wait till we go all the way through. Okay, now I'm going with Ricky. So.
Yeah. This musical chair.
Oh, he's supposed to go around. He's supposed to walk around. When you guys go through, walk around that way.
Walk the whole fucking way here? Then come back?
Around the building. Okay.
What am I really supposed to do?
Okay, you got the drill.
What am I supposed to
See how it works?
Our next, Ricky Allison. Ricky worked building houses for about 2 years prior to joining the union. He eventually found his way to Apollo, where he spent 1 year, then moved on to Thews Sheet Metal, where he is still employed. He had no previous trade-related experience. Ricky has spent his entire apprenticeship in the field of HVAC. Past jobs that he's worked on include Wild Horse Casino, Pendleton, LeGrand College, and Baker Hospital in Baker, Oregon. Ricky would someday like to become a field foreman as well as pursue welding. Ricky, for his 5th year project, built a headache rack for his truck, and his presenter is Michael Lemberger.
Thank you.
Brian Bivens. Brian came to us by way of non-union, where he worked for 1.5 years. He also had 10 years welding experience as well as 2 years at Bellingham Tech. Prior to joining the union, Since starting his apprenticeship, Brian has worked for SMK Tri-Cities, Apollo, Total Energy, and Metal Benders. He has worked in the fields of HVAC and industrial. Past jobs include the waste treatment plant Hanford, Ice Harbor Dam, and McCain's Burley, Idaho. For Brian's fifth-year project, he chose to build a gun safe. His presenter is Joe Valdez. Congratulations. Raul Castellanos started at Randolph Sheet Metal, where he spent 5 years. He then went to SMK Tri-Cities for another 2 years as a material handler. Raul started his apprenticeship working for Apollo Sheet Metal, where he spent 6 months on the Chiawana High School project. He then returned to SMK, where he has remained. Raul has worked mainly industrial and architectural projects. Projects Raul has worked on include Sunnyside High School, Simplot, Moses Lake, Lamb Weston Warden, and Reesers in Pasco. In the future, Raul would like to remain in the area and someday become a field foreman. Raul, for his fifth-year project, designed and fabricated a flat-top grill. His presenter is Arnie Perez. Stephen Crest. Stephen had no sheet metal background or any trade-related experience prior to joining the union. Stephen spent the first 3 years of his apprenticeship with Total Energy, where he worked mainly in the field installing HVAC. He is currently employed by Apollo, where he spends time in the field as an installer. Past jobs Stephen has worked on include the Richland Library, Eastern Oregon University, and Kaibi High School. Stephen would like to take welding classes in the future as well as CAD classes. Stephen built for his fifth-year project a wall-mounted water feature, and his presenter is Brandon Cunningham. Eric Earhard. Eric spent 10 years as a retail manager prior to joining the union. Eric started with Apollo Sheet Metal as an HVAC installer, where he then went to SMK Tri-Cities, where he spent 1 year working mostly architectural. Eric returned to Apollo, where he is currently employed in the CAD department. Past jobs include the waste treatment plant Hanford, Boardman High School, Eisenhower School, Yakima. Eric's plans for the future are to continue in the CAD department and to become benchmark certified. Eric has become benchmark certified since I wrote this. His presenter is Pete Peterson. Isidoro Enriquez. Izzy worked 7 years, non-union residential HVAC. Time out.
No frame for you.
Okay, Izzy worked 7 years non-union residential HVAC prior to joining Local 55. He also attended TriTech Automotive Department for 1 year and Wyoming Tech for 1.5 years. Izzy has been employed by Total Energy for the last 4 years, where he has worked as a field installer of HVAC. Izzy also has relatives working for Apollo. Past jobs Izzy has been a part of include the prison in Walla Walla, 331 building, PNNL, and the 325 building, PNNL. Izzy plans on working to become a better welder and someday become a field foreman. Izzy chose to build a workbench for his 5th-year project, and his presenter is Ken Cox. Jason Gowdy. Jason attended TriTech Diesel program for 2.5 years, as well as CBC for 1 year. Then he went to work for Apollo Inc. for 1 year prior to joining Local 55. Jason has done some architectural as well as HVAC. Jason has been with Apollo his entire apprenticeship, where he's worked on many jobs, including Chiawana High School, PSF Lab, and Eastern Oregon University. Jason's plans are to stay in the area and work to become a well-rounded journeyman and someday pursue classes in business management. Jason, for his 5th-year project, chose to build a squat rack. His presenter is Scott Jameson. Switching. I got Todd next. Todd Haste. Todd worked non-union installing doors and windows prior to becoming an apprentice. Todd spent 3 years with Apollo working mostly industrial and has since been with Total Energy. Todd's stepdad, Cal Method, is recently retired member of Local 55 and was employed by Apollo Sheet Metal. And I've also was told that Cal is a 50-year member, and we'd like to have him come forward at this time.
Over the last 2 years, we've been working hard to acknowledge our retired members. And we have a special meeting for them, but they don't come to the meeting, they listen. So we kind of tricked Cal into coming to the meeting. This is kind of like Cal with his gold watch. Thank you.
Sorry. Todd's past credits include several McCain's projects, Lamb West and Prosser, Walla Walla Corrections, and Connell High School. In the future, Todd would like to work on his welding certifications, pursue becoming a field foreman, and would travel if needed. Todd, for his 5th-year project, designed and fabricated new windows for his boat, and his presenter is Cal Method. Ryan Kenshin. Ryan worked for Apollo Inc. prior to becoming an apprentice. He also had some background in welding as well as fabrication. Ryan has several friends, Travis and Dustin Lindgren and Bill Leach, who are also members of Local 55. Ryan has worked for Apollo Sheet Metal, Nays Power Contractors, and Moses Lake Sheet Metal. Ryan has worked mostly in the industrial field. Past projects include Portland General Electric, PNSF, and Walla Walla General Hospital, as well as many ConAgra Foods projects. Ryan chose for his 5th-year project to build a workbench for his many projects he has hanging out in his garage. His presenter is Rob Fiocchi. Paul Lang. Paul worked as a material handler for Apollo for about 6 months before becoming an apprentice. Paul had no prior sheet metal background, but did have 2 years drafting experience in high school. Paul's brother, Jason Lang, is also a member of Local 55 and employed by Apollo Sheet Metal. Paul has spent his entire apprenticeship with Apollo, where he's worked mainly in HVAC. Projects Paul has worked on include the Pasco High School locker room expansion, Thai Sports, and PSF Labs. In the future, Paul would like to work as a project manager, and he would consider working in the Seattle area. Paul chose for his 5th-year project to install HVAC in his home. His presenter is Jake Christensen.
Take that picture.
No, he did. Or he had somebody take it. Chris Lawrence. Chris came from non-union, where he was a residential HVAC installer in Florida. Chris's uncle, Carl Stredrick, is also a member of Local 55 and employed by Apollo Sheet Metal. Chris spent 6 months as a material handler with Apollo before starting his apprenticeship. He installed HVAC for Apollo for 1.5 years before moving over to SMK Tri-Cities, where he is currently employed. Projects Chris has worked on include BSF, CSF Lab, PSF Lab, Chiawana High School, and many Lamb Weston projects. In the future, Chris would prefer to stay in the area, pursue a degree in design, and maybe become a shop owner. I'd also like to mention that Chris is also benchmark certified. Yeah. Again, that happened after I wrote this. Chris, for his 5th-year project, designed and fabricated a CNC machine, and his presenter is Jeff Mercer.
I could put my mark on it for you, though.
There's the boots right there.
Nick Loftus. Nick had no previous experience prior to becoming a Local 55 apprentice. He did, however, spend 3 years at CBC and 1 year at Eastern pursuing a business degree. Nick has served his entire apprenticeship with Apollo Sheet Metal. He started as a residential material handler, then moved to HVAC fabrication and is currently working in the industrial shop. Nick's good friend and next-door neighbor, Jason Crosby, is also a member of Local 55 and employed by Apollo Sheet Metal. Nick's past projects include PSF Lab, Savannah River Project, Hoag Cellars, and Prosser. In the future, Nick would like to finish his business degree, refine his welding skills, and take some drafting classes. Nick fabricated for his 5th-year project an aluminum single-axle trailer, and his presenter is Rich Hull.
Thank you, John.
William Ryan Longton. Ryan worked for a general contractor before becoming an apprentice with Local 55. Ryan had some previous sheet metal experience. Ryan's dad, Bill Longton, is also a member of Local 55 and employed by Metal Benders Yakima. Ryan has spent his entire apprenticeship with All Valley Sheet Metal in Yakima. He has worked mostly architectural with some industrial. Ryan's past projects include Stanton Archery School, Yakima, Hayden House, Ellensburg. In the future, Ryan would like to work on his welding skills and someday become a field foreman. Ryan, for his 5th-year project, built a wine rack, and his presenter is Bill Longton. Bob Matney. Bob spent 2 years at Perry Tech in Yakima before becoming a Local 55 apprentice. Contractors Bob has worked for include Vance Heating, Metal Benders, Apollo, and Intermec. Bob has worked primarily in the field of HVAC. Past projects include the lab building at the waste treatment plant, Firing Center, Yakima, and the Intel project in Portland. In the future, Bob would like to take welding classes and work to become a well-rounded journeyman. Bob, for his 5th-year project, built cattle feeder panels, and his presenter, Jorge Barbosa. Matt Reinschmidt. Matt worked non-union for Perfection Glass before entering the apprenticeship. Matt was first exposed to sheet metal through Metal Shop in school. He was then persuaded by friend Brian Enriquez to enroll in the apprenticeship through Local 55. Matt has worked with SMK Tri-Cities throughout his apprenticeship, where he has worked primarily industrial. Past jobs Matt has worked on include Pasco High remodel, the CO2 project, Arriva, and the tank project at Arriva. In the future, Matt would like to become a well-rounded sheet metal worker and someday take AutoCAD classes. Matt chose for his 5th-year project to build a copper cupola, and his presenter is Joe Oler. Congratulations. Matt Richardson. Matt worked non-union before becoming an apprentice. He was also an aviation metalsmith in the Navy. Matt has worked for Apollo, SMK Tri-Cities, Total Energy, and McKinstry. He has worked in the fields of architectural, HVAC, and industrial. Matt's past projects include the Amazon Project Boardman, the Siding Project, Plant No. 2 Hanford, Prison Hospital Walla Walla, and Cadillac Tower Richland. In the future, Matt would like to improve his welding skills and work towards becoming a foreman. Matt, for his 5th-year project, built a wind turbine, and his presenter is Scott Hart. Brandon Turley. Brandon had no prior sheet metal experience before starting his apprenticeship with Local 55. Brandon's father, Scott Turley, is also a member of Local 55 employed by Apollo Sheet Metal. Brandon has spent his entire apprenticeship with Apollo. Brandon has worked in the fields of HVAC and industrial. Brandon's current role is as a detailer with Apollo in the CAD department. Jobs Brandon has worked on, been a part of, include Coyote Ridge, Connell, PSF Battelle, CSF Battelle, and Othello Junior High School. In the future, Brandon would like to become Benchmark certified, which he has done. Brandon's presenter is Scott Turley. Congratulations. Devin Van Rooten. Devin attended Tri-Tech for 1 year prior to becoming an apprentice. He started his apprenticeship through the advice of a family friend. Devin has been with Total Energy throughout his apprenticeship, where he has worked mainly in the field of HVAC. Some of Devin's past projects include Boise Cascade, Walla Walla Prison, and Moxie School. In the future, Devin would like to take classes in business management and someday become a field foreman. Devin's fifth-year project was a front bumper for his truck, and his presenter is Callan Tebay. Okay, we're almost there. Dexter Williams. Dexter had no previous sheet metal experience prior to starting his apprenticeship. Dexter does, however, have family in the trade. His dad, Todd Williams, who is also a member of Local 55 and employed by Apollo Sheet Metal. Dexter has served his entire apprenticeship with Apollo. He has worked in the fields of architectural and industrial and HVAC. Jobs Dexter has worked on in the past include Savannah River Project, Intel Project Portland, and the Chiawana High School in Pasco. In the future, Dexter plans on working on his welding skills, possibly taking some welding classes, and work towards becoming a well-rounded journeyman. Dexter designed and built an aluminum toolbox for his truck for his fifth-year project. His presenter is Todd Williams. Michael Womack. Michael worked for 1 year non-union prior to joining the apprenticeship. Michael also attended HVAC classes through Spokane Community College for 2 years and has an AA in HVAC. Contractors Michael has worked for include Banner Furnace, Spokane, SMK Tri-Cities, Spokane, Apollo Spokane, and Apollo Tri-Cities. Michael has worked mainly as an installer in the fields of service and HVAC. Past jobs Michael has worked on include Sustainable Works, Spokane, Ferris High School, Spokane, and the Alcoa plant in Wenatchee. Michael plans to stay in the area while working on becoming a well-rounded journeyman. For his fifth-year project, he customized a piece of boat that I didn't even think floated in the first place. His presenter is Charlie Wright.